call the regular meeting of the Saanich District Board of Education to order. On behalf of us all, I wish to acknowledge, of course, that we're meeting on the traditional territory of the Wasanich peoples who have lived, learned, and worked on these lands, fished these rivers and oceans since time immemorial, and we offer this acknowledgement respectfully and gratitude. I also wish to welcome members of the management team, Superintendent Everwin, Secretary Treasurer Reedy, Directors of Instruction Hunter and Westhaver, and Director Human Resources Robin Reed is with us as well. And I welcome representatives of our partner groups from the Saanich Teachers Association, Mr. Don Peterson, from QP 441, Ms. Candace Whitney, from the Saanich Administrators Association, Principal Anita Coe, and from COPAX, the District Parent Advisory Council, Vice President Tara Keating. Welcome, friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. Let's proceed to adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Trustee Manuel, seconded by Trustee McMurphy. Are there any late items or revisions? Trustee McMurphy?
Just seeking agreement to add on your business arrivals on the minutes, the bike lane question.
Is there any objection to Trustee McMurphy is seeking agreement with the board to ask a question about bike lane issue that was reflected in the minutes? Is there any objection to that when we get the business arrival? No, all right, that's what we'll do. And then I know, Trustee Manuel, that you would like to. I know that you would like to add a report from COPAX under paragraph 13 report of the representative.
Yes.
Is there any objection to that? All right, that will be added. Trustee Silzer.
Chair, I would like to add under item 13 as well, a report on my attendance at the Memorial Park Society meeting last night.
All right. Thank you, Trustee Silzer. Is there any objection to adding that report, trustees? Fine, so we will have three additions under item, or two additions under item 13. That'll read the VISTA report, the COPAX report, and the NPS report. Under business arising, we will have a question or a comment from Trustee McMurphy on the bike lane matter in the minutes. Anything else? All right, is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Well, actually, we have, now we can vote. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. The motion's carried and the agenda is adopted as amended. I should report as well to the meeting that prior to the regular meeting, the board held an in-camera meeting and discussed personnel matters, business affairs, and facilities. Item 3 is the adoption of board meeting minutes of June 19. Are there any errors or omissions to the regular board meeting minutes of June 19, 2024? Hearing none, I declare that those minutes will be adopted and circulated. Item 4 then will be business arising for the minutes. To you, Trustee McMurphy.
Thanks, Chair. At our meeting in June, we moved that we asked the municipalities of Central Saanich, North Saanich, and Sydney to consider the provision of separate bike lanes in future transportation plans. So my question, I guess, for you to the Secretary Treasurer is, have you heard anything back from any of them?
To the chair, the letters, those letters were sent in June, but we have not heard back from any municipalities yet.
Would you advise that we just sit and wait and see if we hear anything, or do you think we should follow up?
I'm happy to follow up on the status of those letters.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Hickman.
Do we need a motion for follow-up?
No.
No?
No, the letters were sent on the authority of the board, and so a follow-up would be consistent with that. Item 5, presentations, delegations, and questions. There are no presentations this evening, but there is an opportunity now for partner representatives or the public to ask questions if they wish. If you do, you're all on screen remote, so I'd like to see a yellow hand or a wiggle or something if you have any questions to us. Seeing none, there will be, of course, a second opportunity later in the meeting for that. And we'll proceed with item 6, which is the report from the chair. And so I say to you all, welcome back to school and to the board and district work after the summer break. This is the 3rd year of the board's term and also the 3rd year of our 5-year strategic plan. There have been some relative challenges this season. I'm complaining. It was a short summer. It was late starting. The weather was mixed. And there was some smoke and some fires in certain places in the province, but we weren't significantly affected by that. And for us, I trust that each one of us involved in the work of public education in the district was able to take the opportunity to travel or read or garden or ride or boat or do whatever, spend time with family. Because these intervals are necessary for renewal and rejuvenation and a fresh perspective on the important work that we all do, whether it be staff or partners or trustees. It's in that context that we particularly appreciate the school startup work in late August and early September. This is an understated and unheralded but massive undertaking in preparing our schools for our students for the year. And it requires a coordinated and integrated approach by our more than 1,000 employees and our partners, each doing their part for the collective whole. And of course, preparation always involves some complexities, and the one that I'll mention this year, of course, is the restrictions on cell phone and personal devices that senior staff was working on so diligently towards the end of last year, and that has been explained to partners as well. That's one example. The board is our own team, but really, in fact, the district is a much larger team delivering the educational product for which we provide governance and direction and support. And so thank you to our partners, Mr. Peterson to the Spanish teachers, Ms. Coe to the administrators, Ms. Keeping to our parents, and even Whitney to our PP support staff for doing your parts in preparing for school startup this year. June is long gone, but this is an opportunity for me too to thank trustees for their board representation and attendance at our graduation and recognition ceremonies in our brick and mortar secondary schools in the district, and also at ILC at SIDES and at Indigenous graduation. It's important on these occasions to show the face of the board and demonstrate our role and our work, but also it's an exciting treat to share in and witness and celebrate and reflect on the student success manifested through those ceremonies, which of course is the reason we're all here and is the essence of our mandate. September 30 will be the annual National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, which should be a day of respect and reflection. And particularly consideration of our significant ongoing and remaining work to be done as we seek reconciliation with Indigenous communities and success for Indigenous students. And it's in that context that I speak on behalf of the entire board. I think when I say we appreciated that in itself is an understated verb. We appreciated the first ever board-to-board retreat with the Wasanich School Board yesterday afternoon. We heard that there was one held 16 years ago. I don't remember it, although I wasn't a trustee at the time. Trustee McMurphy hasn't mentioned it, and she was. So I'm not sure that's accurate. So for our purposes, I think we should be pleased that we truly had the advantage of this milestone retreat yesterday afternoon. It was attended by our trustees, our senior staff, by board members from the Wasanich board and their senior staff, as well. And so first, thank you to Superintendent Everwin and staff for their parts in organizing the event, both not only in organizing it, but in developing a skillful agenda that was both manageable and constructive for us to work through in the time that was permitted. It was a timely event too for us as the public education assistant considers the role of Indigenous representation in governance and the advent of Bill 40 and the developing of Indigenous education councils. It was a wonderful opportunity to dig into some of that with our friends on the Wasanich School Board. And the purpose is also developing our relationships, identifying areas of common interest, ensuring understanding and working together to advance public education generally and particularly for Indigenous students, always in the context of the different cultural, structural, and process differences that we experience. And so I think it's fair to say that we came away from that encouraged, pleased, we found it informative, respectful, and supportive. And of course, we'll see more of that work in the near future as the Indigenous Education Council concept is developed and evolved, and particularly our responsibility for helping with that here in Sandwich. I do want to mention our meeting with the Vancouver Island School Trustees Association in Port Alberni on October 4 and 5. Most, if not all, of our trustees, I believe, will be attending. And the purposes again involve connecting with our island colleagues on the boards on the island, both personally and socially and professionally, of course, all to refine and advance public education for which we're responsible at Vancouver Island and the province. And by way of CODA, we remember that in March, we in our district are hosting the Spring Vista meeting, presumably in cooperation with Suki Victoria, and I anticipate we'll have a report from Trustee Hickman and Trustee Manuel on that when we come to item 13, reports from Trustee Representative. I do want to mention as well our December 5 planning day and board evaluation. The evaluation process is required by policy once per term, and we've designated December 5 for this. You will recall that there have been some discussions in the spring with Mr. Gordon Lee of BC School Trustees Association about that. And you may recall the essential elements that it's anticipated. It will involve a survey of our partner representatives and senior management as well as trustees, and that those folks would also participate with us in the morning evaluative session. It was suggested that then the afternoon would be taken up with further pursuing a couple of items of focus from our March 1 evidence-based planning data by Jordan Tinney. And then on the third half day, Mr. Lee would report to us and discuss the data resulting from the first half day. I circulated an email from him this morning, just received, whereby he gave us a little more information about the survey and the topics consistent with the ministry's leadership series, and developed in part by Mr. Tinney and two other CSDA consultants, and suggested that if we agreed, it would be good to hold that third half day to examine the data in close proximity to the earlier time so that the data doesn't become stale. So I asked you to think about that, and perhaps at the conclusion of my report, we could have any thoughts or comments or direction that I can take along with Vice Chair Silzer back to Mr. Lee so we can refine and finish the plan for December 5. I participated in a chair's call on September 5. This was the first BCSTA chair's call of the school year, and it involved a number of topics. First was a greeting from Minister Singh, wishing us all well as we return to school. There was a lengthy presentation and discussion on Indigenous representation on boards, because not only we, but other boards have that interest. And I circulated some of that information, I believe, among trustees. The essence of the discussion was that we're circumscribed by the current legislative requirements that determine the number of trustees, 3, 5, 7, or 9, according to geographic areas, and do not provide for election of a specific person or qualification. It was urged that boards consider the purpose of adding or pursuing this. Would it be to consult or to engage or to co-govern? And who is leading the initiative? And the takeaway really was that with the advent of Bill 40 and Indigenous Education Councils, how would this interest be affected by those? And would it be useful still to pursue questions of elders and residents and advisors in the face of that? And so the urging from BCSDA to chairs to take to boards was to move slowly and thoughtfully and carefully and respectfully, and always, of course, in consultation with Indigenous communities in this. I do want to mention, as we talked about before, the October 19 provincial election and the advocacy that attaches to that from boards in the province. I expect that we may have some discussion about that further on in the meeting. BCSDA, for its role, has provided election advocacy kits, template letters with respect to certain priorities that the organization identified from surveys, none of which, as I understand it, reflect our priority, which is unfunded inflationary costs. So whether this board wishes to do anything with the advocacy kit or those kinds of letters beyond what I anticipate the motion will be later on is for the board. And then finally, and I've done this before, so forgive me if you remember last year, but September is really a good opportunity for us to remind ourselves and reinforce and consider the essence of our work. There are many pieces that we deal with all the time: personnel, facilities, finance, money, policy, relationships. It's all in the context, of course, of the overarching principles and priorities established by our strategic plan. But the point and the essence is clear and fundamental to ensure that through all of that, we are effecting improvement in student achievement and student success. And so as we proceed with the work this year, I respectfully encourage us and urge us in every discussion, on every issue, in every debate, in every decision, to ruminate on our task and ensure that it supports that goal, that mandate. Thank you. Before proceeding with the superintendent's report, I would welcome trustees to provide any comment or direction that Trustee Silver and I might take back to Mr. Lee on the question of the planning date. Trustee Elder.
Thank you, Chair. I'm confused. I look at his proposal for those 3 sessions, and maybe I'm just not reading it correctly, but I see the first session as being the administration of the survey. I'm not sure how that's a session. I think that's just preparing a survey and emailing it to selected participants and asking them to respond by a certain date. So I don't know how that's a session. After the session, it isn't. The second proposed session is following up on each trustee's choice of a couple, which I think means 2, of topics arising from March 1st. That's 14 topics. I don't know how that could happen in a half day, and I'm not sure how we determine what those 14 topics are, and I'm hoping that what he means is if as a board you can come together and discuss, which 3 items you'd like to talk about further, then I can see that as a session. Third session is reviewing the results from the survey, which could happen as soon as the day after the first day, which can't because the survey would have been administered on the first day, and it takes a lot of work to compile the results from the survey. So I think we need some clarification. What I'm seeing is a survey administered early November. We get together on December 5th and review the findings of the survey for half a day and spend another half a day on topics emerging from the March 1st evidence-based planning session. So if what I'm saying makes sense to others, then perhaps that could be the direction back to Mr. Lee, is to say prepare the survey and get it out to the partner, to the reps, the respondents, administrators, partner reps, and so on. I'm assuming we would be surveyed as well, the self-analysis, part of evaluation as well. But so getting that done is a job, and then planning the day, I think, would be reviewing the results and following up on March 1st. So for me, that would be the direction to get back to him. But I'm curious to know what others think.
Well, no one else is on the speaking list at this point, but I do agree with you. I think that was the discussion, and that was the plan, and this is 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and maybe the summary. I know that Mr. Lee is doing this kind of thing with other districts, and I'm wondering if there's some overlap that has led to this confusion. But I believe our discussion and my last email to him was, do the survey first. And don't spend a lot of time in the day orienting partners to the evaluative work. Deal with that in writing ahead of time along with the survey, because that was a suggestion he made, Trustee Albert, as well. And then the first, you're right, the first actual session would be dealing with that survey results for the evaluation purpose. The second half day would be dealing with the TINI work, if we could agree on what those would be. And then Mr. Lee wants to come back to discuss the data that he took away from those sessions on the third time, and suggested it could even be the morning after. But I don't know, first of all, if that's agreeable to the board, or if it's necessary, or even if December 6th is available.
Can I just follow?
Yes, please.
I don't see why he'd need to come back. We'd have a half day to review the findings of the survey. And then that job is gone and it's over to us. We don't need him anymore. And another half day to follow up on the evidence-based planning session, and that's the 5th, and that's it. And we may decide to schedule another day to work internally or with partners and admin reps. So here's what we've learned. Let's talk more about it. And that may need some facilitation, but I think just planning those 2 part days would be the way to go.
Thank you. Others? Thank you. Well, that's helpful. Trustee Hickey.
While I was not able to attend when Jordan was here, I did see the results of those sessions. And if I recall correctly, there were a few key items that the majority of trustees felt were important. And perhaps those are the ones that we tease out from that information, rather than having each trustee pick 1 or 2 of the statements. It sounds like there'd be crossover in ways.
And I think Trustee Elder makes a good point that if we were to do that, we would probably wouldn't have sufficient time to address all this. Mr. Tinney did send us a summary that I can forward to Gordon, if that would be helpful. What say you with respect to Trustee Elder's suggestion that we proceed with the survey of trustees, partners, and management? That we then spend the first half day dealing with that, and then the second half day addressing the TINI interest. And then we don't need at that point at least to plan a third half day. Trustee McMurphy?
I'd like to focus on specificity and the progress of the process. How's that for peace?
That's helpful. Trustee Silver?
I agree with that approach. Do you want a motion?
If there's consensus, I think I'm comfortable that I have your direction. Does anyone object to that outline? Then what I'll do as a result of that, this discussion and this agreement, is I'll email Mr. Lee and I'll copy Vice Chair Silver, who's working with me as well. And I'm sure we'll have further report next month. All right. Thank you for your help with that. And we'll move to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy New Year to everybody. We're blessed in education to have an opportunity to say that twice in the year. And There is, as usually the case, an optimism in the air in our schools, an opportunity for renewal and re-engagement, and the goal that we all share, which is improving student learning and success and ensuring that they have as bright a future as possible. In my report this evening, I have a few topics to share. If I can get the screen to move here. So this evening, I want to talk about some pride. I will talk about safe access to schools, preliminary enrollment numbers that we're starting to see crystallize a little bit, some September staffing statistics, the district's accessibility plan for 2024 to 2027. I'll be inviting both directors West Tabor and Reed to comment on the process that has led us up to this point. Let's talk a little bit about Pride. On July the 7th, we participated in the Victoria Pride Parade. There were a number of staff there and there were some students present. It was an enjoyable time. That was the picture right before we all started to march in downtown. It was, to say the least, a hot day. If I can recall the weather, it was certainly balmy, but we had a great day. You know, lots of joy and lots of happiness, and lots of acceptance of the diversity that defines the peninsula here in Saanich. You may recall last springtime, the government introduced Bill 22, which was the Safe Access to Schools Act. So that legislation expired at the end of June. This legislation was then reintroduced this fall and is currently in effect without an expiry date. To refresh your memory, this is provincial legislation that is designed to protect students, staff, and families from harmful disruptions and protests around schools. That it preserves a safe access to education. People cannot impede the access or egress from schools. They cannot intimidate or interfere in the proceedings of a school, and they can't disrupt the students or the activities. It is applicable to all K-12 schools in the province, and it extends to 20 meters outside of the legal boundaries of the school property. It's in effect from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. on school days, not on the weekends. However, extracurricular activities are covered if they extend outside of those time periods and also on the weekends. It does not include activities by outside community groups, et cetera, only for school-based and sanctioned activities that are extracurricular in nature. It also includes the childcare spaces that schools might have on their sites. It provides police with enforcement powers to issue tickets and make arrests if appropriate on site. And so while we don't anticipate this type of behavior or these activities within our schools, we haven't seen them. This is province-wide legislation and one that we've made our administrators aware of. And it is my understanding that the local police forces are also up to date on this legislation as well. Everybody's always curious as to what enrollment looks like. It's always a precarious game at this point in time because we just don't know for sure. We have more accurate numbers the earlier the grade. The later the grade, it becomes a bit more challenging, but I do have some early numbers for you to look at. In elementary, we projected just over 2,900 students, and we're projecting about 14 below that number. In middle schools, we projected just over 1,600, and we were projecting about 23 students below. In both elementary and middle, it's easier to count because we just count bodies that walk through the door. But we have families that might not have arrived back from vacation or family trips overseas. We'll also have new registrations showing up. We still have had a couple of those come in this week. So it's too early to put a firm number on those. Sides is projecting about 25 students above their enrollment, which was projected at 500 students. Our Alton continuing ed programs, we projected at 205. I anticipate that we'll land on that number. There's often a lot of interest in those programs, and so I anticipate that number to be relatively static, but we'll know more later on. Secondary, we projected at just under 2,200 students, and it's just too early to tell because students are still choosing courses, and secondary count is based not just on who walks through the door, but how many courses they take. And so counselors are still meeting with students, and so it really is a bit of a guessing game right now, so it's not really fair to put any numbers up. However, final enrollment, where we projected just over 7,400, we were just over 7,300 last year. We will be able to confirm enrollment by the middle of October, so at this meeting next month, we should be able to give some fairly firm figures for the board's consideration and information. When we take a look at staffing levels, we're fortunate here in the Sandwich School District that we are seen as a bit of a destination district. We're fortunate to have a college and university on our doorstep that provide access to post-secondary trained adults who want to work in our district. With regards to teachers, when we take a look at the spring staffing process, it starts in April. We have hired 75 new teachers from outside of the district. Our TOC list is sitting at approximately 313, which is quite healthy. And the HR department is in the process of reviewing 70 new applications. The TTOC list is an interesting balancing act. It's not a matter of putting more and more people on it, because if you do that during the times when there isn't a whole lot of work out there, those people aren't working and they'll leave the district. So you need to find that sweet spot as to where to hire on the list and how many to put on the list so that they're getting adequate work. And we're still able to staff those absences when they come up on our system. The HR department has filled 312 postings since April. That's a lot of work and a lot of interviewing and a lot of prioritizing. That's a huge amount of work for a relatively small department. Recruitment is ongoing in all of the areas with specific focus on non-enrolling positions such as counselors, teacher librarians, inclusion support teachers. Technology education is always an area of interest for us to find qualified teachers, as is French immersion. We're fortunate to have a small number of French immersion teachers who are on the TTOC list right now, so that's very advantageous and not common around province, so we're fortunate in that regard. Our support staff, we start counting in June in terms of the new positions that are posted. We've hired 43 external hires. These include educational assistants, clerical staff, bus drivers, custodial, grounds crews, library technicians, school secretaries, various trades, and youth and family counselors. There have been 111 postings that have all been filled. And again, like the teachers, we are actively recruiting in certain areas such as custodians, including support workers, education assistants, bus drivers, and library techs. I want to give a huge thank you to Director Reed and her department for all the work that they do to ensure that our schools and our buildings are staffed with highly qualified professional people that really helps make our district one of the best in the province. So thank you, Director. My final set of comments is around the accessibility plan. This has been an ongoing evolution of creating this plan over a year now in terms of working with the accessibility committee that Directors Westingberg and Reed have been leading. The plan was basically put together in its final form late last spring. And I'm proud to say that we have worked with our in-house team to create a document that is not only filled with wonderful text, but is filled with imagery that actually communicates who we are as a district and what we believe in. I would like, if it's okay, Mr. Chair, just to pass the floor to Directors Reed and Westhaver to offer just a couple of minutes of commentary about the process to this point and what the plan represents.
Chair, to the trustees, I'll start.
Yeah, I think it's, Superintendent, everyone has said it's been a year of many meetings, and I like the notion that we took our time to do a very thoughtful and thorough job with a very enthusiastic committee. We did not turn anybody away who applied for this committee. We included everybody, and which was nice to see most of the committees stick with us right through to the end. What you see here is a version, a cleaner version, shall we say, and one that we will find now on our website. It came into this fruition basically over the summer, and the from Info Systems out of Sides did a marvelous job taking basically the PDF version we had, which is a little clunkier to read and doesn't look as nice, and turned it into this. So it's so nice that we could have this converted in-house. So essentially, from here, the next step would be to send out another message, likely through School Messenger, to the community, showcasing that this plan is available, and also it opens the door for feedback through the mechanism, so that we can solicit feedback from our community about any perceived barriers that families, students, employees have within the buildings that are within employment opportunities, for example, within the district. So we wanted you all to have a peek at this. As I said, it's on the website, and we will be sharing this with management. And then the next step is to begin mapping out our meetings for the following year. Director Reid wants to talk a little bit more on that piece.
Sure. Through the chair, wanted to add further to Director Westhaver. This was very much a collaborative effort, and it took a year because there were lots of voices, opinions, and perspectives around the table. We felt within Saanich that it was really important that all of those perspectives were carefully considered, and this is very much the work of all of those at the table. I'm proud to say that we had everyone from parents to support staff, teachers. We even had an occupational therapist that works with us very collaboratively from Island Health sitting at the table. We had a really, really good group of interdisciplinary individuals, all committed to creating a document that we could use as a foundational starting point. We've used the 2024 to 2027 year period mainly because we wanted to align with the strategic plan period, knowing that there's going to be additional consultation leading into the next strategic plan period that we could potentially use to bolster any additional changes that would be required for future renditions of our accessibility plan. Furthermore, I do want to say that this is not a one and done. This is a living document. And there is every intention for our committee to keep pushing forward with the good work that we've been doing. We know that as feedback comes in through the website and through administrators, that there may be changes to this plan required. And we're going to continue meeting as a group to update this plan as necessary as we move forward. We're also hoping that this plan is used as a bit of a marketing tool to let people know that we're here, that the work is underway, and that we're open to additional feedback. And we're hoping it garners a bit more momentum in terms of voice from our larger learning community in relation to some of the barriers that currently exist within Saanich.
Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Trustees, are there any questions or comments on the superintendent's report as augmented by the directors who spoke as well? Trustee
I
Albert?
wonder if it would be appropriate to express the board's appreciation to the seat. This has been a lot of work and delicate work. It's been difficult, and I think the product is outstanding. Everything that I was hoping to see, I see, from physical barriers to educational barriers to cultural barriers to strategies to overcome them. And this becomes an accountability document for our district. And people look at it and say, look, you said this, and I'm not seeing it. And it gives us a place to have that tough conversation. I think this is outstanding work. And I would like to recognize the work of the team. And I would actually propose a motion to that effect, that the board expresses appreciation to the members of the seat for their work in creating the district accessibility plan.
Thank you, trustee Elgin, seconded by trustee Murphy. Is there any further comment on that, trustee? The question then?
Just that I would assume that this motion, which isn't using glowing terms, it's just technical,
It will be,
would result in a glowing letter
yes.
written by somebody. It's more glowing than the motion.
It will. All right, all in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you very much.
There are no school successes because school wasn't in session. We just had a lengthy discussion about that. And so we'll move to committee reports, item 8, the Education Directions Committee with Chair Silzer.
Chair, Education Directions Committee, had one item on the agenda, and that was, receipt of the framework for enhancing student learning report. Director Hunter and, Assistant Superintendent Mackenzie, I believe, also helped with the presentation. And we are pleased to make the following recommendation. The committee recommends, and I, trustee Filter, believe that the board approve the enhancing student learning report September 2024.
Is there a second? Trustee Vandal, further discussion?
That's a couple of technical questions.
Yes, trustee.
It's no longer called FEST, right? The F has come off.
At the
It's just enhancing student learning report. So I wanted just for clarity in the motion, rather than moving an amendment, if it should say that the board approved, is it 25-26? The 2025-2026?
No,
No.
That's what it says in the motion.
well, no, the motion I read was this, the committee recommends.
I'm looking at the report.
The motion was for 2024.
So those are the
That's not the one I read, and it's not the one that was, it wasn't correctly put in that draft report, I believe.
okay.
Yeah.
So knowing that this can be cleaned up before it's put into the minutes, that it's as you said rather than as it's written. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
I think that's right, trustee Elder. You're right. It is reflected differently in the report, and trustee Silzer as chair read it as it should be.
Yes, because the title of the report was Enhanced Student Learning Report, dated September 2024. If I may speak to the motion,
Yes.
Chair. So we were very pleased to see, it's a large document, very dense. It follows the template provided by the ministry, and it was very carefully reviewed by the committee, as presented by Director Hunter. Yeah, so we, it's in a sense, well, there were no suggested changes to it. As we reviewed.
Through the chair, a couple of minor, just basically, I think there's a dash somewhere in one ending in the word, but otherwise.
And it's subject for approval.
All right, thank you, trustees. Is there any other discussion on the motion and report, of course, which is the subject thereof? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Chair, there was, the item that had been on the agenda was, that will be on the October agenda is, the strategic plan on student voice strategy and global citizenship feedback. That will be discussed at on committee day in October. And our future agenda items continue the data sharing around strategic plan goals, the aforementioned student voice plan, and the introduction of the literacy plan.
Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Are there any questions for Trustee Sills or other? Before we move on, Director Hunter, on behalf of the board, I wish to express our appreciation for that considerable work. Yes, and I appreciate that Director Westhaver and Assistant Superintendent Mackenzie were heavily involved. So to all three of you, the board, I'm sure, appreciates those efforts resulting in a very good report. Moving then to item 10, Finance, Facilities, and Technology with the Chair.
Thank you, Chair. We have coming from the committee 4 recommendations. The committee recommends that I, Trustee Elder, move that the board approve the internal restriction of accumulated operating surplus as presented in note 14 in the 2023-24 financial statement.
Second by Trustee McMurphy. Trustee Elder.
Thank you. My comment here will be that each of these motions was discussed extensively in committee, and that came out of presentations by Secretary Treasurer Reid and Director Siniglia on all of these matters, with supporting documentation. It's also included in this report. So anyone who has any questions or further considerations is certainly welcome to raise them. I think it's been well covered in committees.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Committee recommends that Trustee Elder move that the board approve the transfer of $120,353 from accumulated operating surplus to local capital as presented in Schedule 1 in the 2023-24 financial statement.
Seconded by Trustee Murphy. Trustee Elder. Any discussion, trustees? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Committee recommends that Trustee Elder move that the board approve the 2023-24 financial statements.
Seconded by Trustee Murphy. Trustee Elder. Trustees, discussion, comment, question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And separate from financial matters, there was a discussion at Finance, Facilities, and Technology about advocacy, especially in relation to things financial, in relation to anticipated all candidates meetings, in relation to the also anticipated upcoming provincial election. So the committee recommends, and I, Trustee Elder, move that the chair be authorized to attend on behalf of the board local all candidates meetings to seek support for additional provincial funding for Saanich schools.
Seconded by Trustee Murphy. You wish to speak to it? Trustee Murphy?
I don't know if anybody else has heard of any, but I know there's one in North Saanich, the North Saanich Residents Association is having a meeting, and I can give you the details.
Assuming it's passed.
It's assuming it passes, yes.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I assume there'll be a number. Trustees, is there any other discussion? Trustee Hickman?
Thank you, Chair. Where we've got for additional provincial funding, I would like to offer an amendment to say, seek support for unfunded inflationary pressures that are being felt by the Saanich School District.
Okay, let's make that a motion, so that we can have an organized discussion about that, Trustee
Okay.
Hickman. So you would replace additional provincial funding for Saanich schools with what wording?
Support for funding
Unfunded?
unfunded inflationary costs experienced.
Support for funding for unfunded inflationary costs
Yes,
for Saanich schools.
Saanich School District.
Is there a seconder for that? Not seeing seconder, Trustee Hickman, so the amendment will fail for that. Chris, are you seconding?
No,
Okay.
but I wish you had speak if I may.
Well, we don't have an amendment to speak to. All right, so the amendment fails.
Okay.
We'll go back to debating the main motion, Trustee McMurphy.
I'm totally in sympathy with the efforts of trustee Hickman to specify what we're talking about. But I think at an all candidates meeting, the point we need to make is there's not enough money to keep our schools running the way they should be. And if we try to get into unfunded inflationary pressures, we just have to spend too much time explaining what that is. And I think the message that we want to get out is there's not enough money coming into the system from the provincial government to support the needs of the education system in Saanich. And that's the main message. And whether, you know, how much detail the chair would want to get into in terms of elaborating the specific details or whatever. But I think the idea would be to keep the message as direct and more syllable words free as possible for the short time we get in those kinds of circumstances.
I'll come to you, trustee Hickman, because you haven't spoken to the motion except to make an amendment which failed. So you and then trustee Howard.
Yes, to my bill.
No, it's not on the floor, so we're speaking to the motion as if.
Then I'll pass, thank you.
All right.
You can do the same thing. I spoke to you.
We're all friends here. It's not on the floor, but feel free to comment.
My concern is that if our advocacy is just to more money, that the message out there from our existing government is that they're spending more than they ever have, and they have evidence to that, but it's targeted funding. And I know we don't want to get into the weeds and the minutiae, but if these candidates go back and have a look at the information that's public and out there, that's what they're going to see. So if we keep it broad, there's a potential that they're not going to understand the need.
So if the motion passes, then the chair is given authority to advocate in this fashion, trustee Hickman. I anticipate tailoring my presentation to accommodate those kinds of concerns. And it may be that you'd like to come along with me.
Thank you for that invitation.
Thank you for that. Trustee Elder?
What you just said, Chair.
Thank you. Anything else on the motion, trustees? All in favor? Opposed? The motion's carried.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, trustee Elder. We'll move then to item 12, the policy development committee report for Chair Van Welt.
Thank you, Chair. So at our committee meeting, we did not have any questions, but we did have an item for discussion, which was policy 9, board operations, and more specifically section 7, procedures for delegations to board. We were presented with some amendments that were directed to staff in our June policy meeting, and there was some discussion on it, and we did a little bit of minor updating and moving things around, and we are now presented with a amended copy, and the committee recommends that I, trustee Gallo, move one, that the board confirm its consideration of the proposed amendments to policy 9, board operations. 2, in accordance with policy 6, policy making and review, if the board confirms its consideration of the proposed amendments, the policy committee chair will provide notice of motion that at November 27th, 2024 public meeting of the Board of Education, the policy committee chair will move the following motion. That amendments to policy 9, board operations be approved.
All right, so thank you, trustee Van Welt. Let's take them one at a time because I'm not convinced the second one to be a motion. Yeah.
Fair enough.
But let's deal with the first one then. That the board confirms consideration of the proposed amendments to policy 9, board operations. Is there a second? Trustee McMurphy, would you like to speak further to that?
No, I think I
You did give a preamble.
I did give a little bit of preamble.
Thank you. Trustees, is there discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll put the question. All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. Before we proceed, may I have your advice, Mr. Reid? Should the second part be comprised as a motion, or is that simply notice that the board, having passed the previous motion, trustee Manuel will now give notice?
Now that the board has confirmed its consideration of these changes, the committee chair, Manuel will now provide notice of motion of intention to move approval of these policy changes at the November meeting.
All right, so if you could do that now, trustee Manuel, provide that notice of motion.
Okay, so I should just reword this a little bit. So in accordance with policy 6, policy making and review, following the confirmation of the proposed amendments to policy 9, I, trustee Manuel, the policy committee chair, provide notice of motion that at the November 27th, 2024 public meeting of the Board of Education, the policy committee chair will move the following motion that amendments policy 9 board operations be approved.
Thank you. It's already good. And so we'll deal with that in November. Thank you. Anything further, trustee Manuel?
And that is my report.
Any questions for trustee Manuel on the report? Thank you. Thank you for those committee reports. We'll now move to item 13, reports from trustee representatives. First of 3, Bank of Broward School Trustees Association, trustee Hill. And I think you may have some help from trustee Manuel.
Trustee Manuel can jump in at any time if I miss anything. Carrie, Lee and I met earlier this week to discuss the March conference that we'll be hosting. We have formal confirmation from both Victoria and the Sault School Districts that they are participating. So there will be 3 of us. Next steps are to determine how the time is going to be allocated to each of the districts, as well as VISTA for their work that they need to do at this conference. And we will also be working with our directors of education, Hunter and Westhaver, and the assistant superintendent McKenzie to decide what Savage wants to present during their allotted time. And that is all I have to.
Thank
Do you want to ask me some?
Just that this will be a standing, we'll give reports each month. To the conference. Just to keep it the price of what's happening.
As we had a meeting, right? Thank you to all 3 of you, including Ms. Latsi, for this ongoing work and preparation. Is that it then, trustee Hickman?
Yes.
With respect to that, then we'll go to trustee Manuel and the COPAX report.
So Chair Dunford and I attended the first meeting of COPAX last Thursday, and it was a very well-attended meeting. We had all of the senior staff came, and there was 6 to 8 people in person and about the same online, so it was a very good turnout. I think that usually happens at the beginning of the school year, but it was really nice and refreshing to see a lot of parents coming out to attend the meetings. We had our superintendent talked to the parents about AI and how it's here, and how the schools and staff are going to start to learn about how we can use it within the schools and with the students. I actually first started with the trustees, and Chair Dunford talked about advocacy, the role of board's advocacy, where we would, how we, it's in our plan, we have an advocacy plan, and that we will continue to advocate for our students. And I touched base a little bit on just in our upcoming meeting in October. And then The other team members, or the executive team members, talked about the transportation and how that was rolling out, the numbers that were there. Assistant Superintendent Mackenzie talked about the personal devices and how that was looking within all levels of the schools, elementary, middle, and secondary. As well, he gave an update on the financial skills assessment schedule and information for that. And Director of Instruction, Wes Tabor, and I am sorry, I always have to think about what the title is. So, and he talked about the Mercury results, gave sort of an overview of what the results were looked like, and I think, and that was it for staff. And we all left.
Yes.
And we all left.
We did. Any questions for Trustee Badwell? Thank you for that summary.
Thank you.
I have nothing to add. And then the Memorial Park Society report, Trustee Silzer.
Thank you, Chair. I attended the Memorial Park Society meeting yesterday, September 17th. Just two highlights. One is that Memorial Park Society had its application for charitable tax stamp denied by Canada. But apparently it happens all the time. They responded and they're working on it with the help of legal counsel. And hoping that a Supreme Court trust decision will help vote agreement success there. That precedent will give a favorable result. And then secondly, pickleball came up as a topic because Memorial Park Society is entertaining the idea of leasing the Blue Heron Park, part of it, to the District of North Saanich, build pickleball courts. And I asked whether that would have any, impinge at all on our lease or the park and track. No, they said it would not, because if I got it right, they want to put it next to the soccer pitch at the top of the road.
There's a condo there.
Yeah, that's right. There is. Yes. There is. So many hundreds of people perhaps will be putting in their opinions about the matter. So those two
Parking lots that extra use too.
yeah, and apparently the soccer people would like to have another washroom, and that would be part of the deal. Anyway, they're working on it. That concludes that report.
Thank you, Trustee Silzer. Are there any questions for Trustee Silzer on the MPS report? Trustee McMurphy?
I'm just quite dumbfounded that they didn't get the charitable status back. And I understand they might have said things like, well, this is standard, but I can't believe that something like the MPS wouldn't be able to explain past circumstances and get approval to go forward. It sounds quite dicey to me. If I may, Chair, the CEO reported that it's common for people's applications to be rejected for the Canada Revenue Agency to insist upon certain things. And the problem is they have two applications on the go. One for the trust, for the foundation, and one for the society. So they're operating a theater. So, and that
is for profit. So I don't know what the issues are, but they have hired legal counsel to help with this, and apparently legal counsel, this happens all the time, it's fine. And they had to reply by September 8th, and they don't want to know, receive a response.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Moving then to correspondence, we have two letters. One is from the Métis Nation of July 22, 2024. I think Superintendent Allen would like you to comment on that order of discussion.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As you pointed out, the chair received a letter from Métis Nation, British Columbia, to seek consideration from the board for inclusion in the Indigenous Education Council, of which the school board is obligated to provide a structure for, of which the local First Nation community has authority over membership. This is a sensitive issue for Indigenous peoples within the province, and one that we are seeking some clarity of expression back that you could include in a note back to Ms. Trudeau, who wrote to you earlier. At the end of the day, the local nation will determine who sits on the Indigenous Education Council, and we will be working closely with them to ensure to help facilitate the construction of that council and work with them in the implementation of it.
Thank you. Comments, trustees, or questions? Question number.
Well, in the letter, they invite us to connect to the Métis Nation and Greater Victoria Association to identify a representative who will bring Métis perspectives to the IEC. How does that fit in with what you just said?
On the surface, it doesn't. It is not this board's role to assign membership to the IEC. That rests with the local First Nation community. Hence the reason why we're looking for some wording with assistance from the nation in response to this request.
Trustee Allen?
I'm just thinking in terms of respectful closing of the loop on this, because we're not going to take action on it. We should respond. It's to the board. And if there should be a motion to some effect, perhaps referring the matter to the superintendent for consideration in the development of the IEC, or just something to let them know that it's not being ignored.
I think it would be appropriate to move something.
This is the year of the superintendent, that would be a helpful or intrusive motion, or both.
I consider it a neutral motion. I'm working with the Indigenous Education Department along with conversations with the local nation around what a response could look like, and that's something I'll be doing anyways. As the correspondence was addressed to the board chair, I think that's probably where the response should come from. If the board is more comfortable passing a motion to facilitate that work behind the scenes, I'm happy to receive that as either a positive or a negative form.
I don't see the need for a motion unless it's helpful. I do think without a motion, perhaps the chair would be inclined to respond in any event, say thank you for your letter, board. And not much more than that. Or do I have to do that in motion?
I intended to respond, Trustee Elwood, but I also intended to incorporate more than simply acknowledgement. So I was aware that the superintendent had an interest in appropriate wording for that business work.
From my point of view, since I raised this, I'd be happy to leave it at that.
I see other nods, and so I take it there's consensus without a motion to proceed in that fashion. Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent, for your your explanation. And then the second item is the letter from Ms. Peters of September 6, 2024, with respect to human trafficking. Is there any comment, trustees, questions with respect to that? I have acknowledged receipt, but that's it. Trustee McMurphy?
Did you, in your receipt, did you confirm that it shared with the board?
She sent it to everybody, I think.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, she did. Yeah. Just, I didn't know if it's necessary to tell her, yes, we got it.
Well, I told her, I acknowledged receipt on behalf of the board. That was my language.
Okay, that's
So I think that does it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this takes us then to item 15, the question period. It's our second opportunity for partner representatives or public or guests to ask any questions. Principally, the intent is with respect to matters that arose during the meeting between the first opportunity and this. So, folks on the screen, if you have anything to ask, please signify. Not seeing anyone rushing to take the floor, we'll move on to other business as submitted, and that has to do with approving the annual work plan. And I'll turn to Secretary Taylor to address that, please.
There were above annual work plan on the screen. There were two changes that I wanted to highlight. The first change is that the BC Trustee Academy has moved to November. So you'll see in December there was a deletion to attend the BC Trustee Academy, and then it was added here in November. And then the other, the second change was last year we noted that there was a requirement in policy 25 that a report be provided to the board on international program enrollment. So that's in policy 25. And we noted last year that it had that it was not in the annual work plan. So now we have added it to the annual work plan. And you see it here. It's in November. It's also been added. This year it's been added in April. And so that's the provision of that report on enrollment is required by policy 25 in November and April. Other than that, there have been no other changes to the work plan, other than those two.
Trustee Murphy.
Move adoption.
Trustee Murphy moves adoption of the annual work plan, seconded by Trustee Vandal. Well, do you second it first? Are you happy to second it or not? All right, Trustee Hickman will second. Trustee McMurphy, you move the motion, and we'll go then to Trustee Vandal.
I can ask my question.
Yes?
Thank you. It's like not a policy, but a question. Why wasn't the VISTA mentioned in October?
You feeling like Trustee Hickman?
We attend the VISTA in October, and then we'll attend it again in March. And I don't know if it's not policy.
Yeah.
Thanks for paying attention, Trustee Vandal.
Where do we need to attend?
It would be October and March.
So you have to just continue to have,
They will. They'll listen.
give those 2 months.
Yeah.
And we could adjust it each year. So yeah, same as we have here at the BCSTA Academy, we would have attend this in October and March.
The trustees, is there agreement that we should insert those additions for the plan this year as part of its adoption?
We do actually have an ongoing.
Do we?
If we
we want for the specific ones of this.
Well, I don't know that we need to, because you can argue that it's listed there. But I can, in the board's hands, here, what the preference is. How about this, if someone wants to include them specifically in October and March, let's have a motion. Otherwise, we'll leave it in ongoing. Not seeing any hands, so. Oh, trustee Van.
I would like it included, because as I go through to see what board plan is.
Okay, all right, thank you. So trustee Vandal moves that we include a reference to attending Vista in each of October and March for this plan, seconded by trustee Silter. Thank you. Any trustee Vandal, it's your motion to amend. Do you have anything to add to your comments about that?
Well, as a newbie and I went through it, I go and put all the dates in, I couldn't find out where to put this in my planner, so that's why I came up.
Okay, no, fair enough. Trustee McMurphy?
I'm just presuming that it would be deleted from the ongoing.
Yes. Trustee Silter?
So if that's the case, then under April, we have the CSTA annual general meeting.
Let's deal with this amendment first.
Yeah.
And so I'm not seeing any other hands on adding Vista in the two places to that amendment. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you. That amendment is carried. Now, trustee Silver, your point was with respect to BCSDA?
AGM. Yeah. Which is always in April, right? Yeah, it is.
So,
So to be consistent, so we're putting in the BCSTA trustee academy in November, and to be consistent, we should add,
So this is what we have.
That would actually be more, we would have to deal with that more in February or
Yeah.
March, because we have to submit it early.
that's what I was going to say too. We have to, I don't know what the date is for submitting policies, usually a couple months before.
You don't need a January.
Yeah.
Research.
February.
all right, so before we go back to trustee Silver's point about the meeting itself, trustees, is there agreement that we should move the approval of policy positions from April to January?
Yeah.
Any objection? Okay, thank you. That's done. Now, trustee Silver, your point is that we should actually list the AGM in April, in your view. Is there any objection to that, trustees? All right, so that is done as well. Thank you. Those then are three amendments. Trustee Silver?
And I just, yeah, under April, under regular board meeting agenda items, the last item seems to be a repeat of review report on the National Program Enrollment Report. Is that the rule that we have to review it?
I think we do it twice.
We do? Okay, never mind, sorry.
Trustee Albert?
I know that on the ongoing at the very end, I believe it says, local enhancement agreement, that should probably say local education agreement.
Yes.
That change to be made agreeably.
Yes. Any objection, trustees, to changing enhancement to education? The last item.
And I have two requests.
Okay, so that change is agreed. Local education agreement, trustee Allen?
I think we have a new habit of reviewing and approving school plans, and I don't think it's on the work plan yet. Should it be in there in June?
Mr. Chair, I believe that was where it landed last spring. Was it June?
I believe it was a commitment to do it anyway.
All right, so trustees, can we agree to add approval of school plans in June?
Thank you, Judge. The other thing I'd like to see in there that may take a little more discussion, maybe it's a future, is an annual review and progress update on the Santa Charter First Nations Métis Inuit Enhancement Agreement. Because it's active on our website, it's live, it's current, it's important, and it's not referenced here. I don't know if the board is in the habit of receiving it and getting updates. I think we should be. It's still, first of all, I know we're not required to have one anymore, but I guess one of my questions to you is, are we committed as a district to continue having it, reviewing it and updating it and negotiating with the Sandwich board on it and providing and providing some updates? Or is it kind of like unassessed bed?
Do you have any comment, Superintendent?
Thank you to the chair. It's a good question. I think we are entering an interesting transition period with regards to legislative requirements and documents and processes and governance structures. I don't have a clear crystal ball at this point in time to determine whether that's something that's going to be ongoing after this year. It certainly can be added to the plan and then reviewed if circumstances change. I think I would put it under ongoing versus a specific time of the year if you wanted to, or so inclined to add it, because it's difficult to predict timing on those types of conversations.
I would like to see it added as ongoing, so at least we know that we want to talk about it again. It might be to say we're not doing it anymore. I hope not. I think it's a really valuable and important stuff. So it would at least be added as something to review on an ongoing basis.
How would you title the edition then, Trustee Howe?
It can just say enhancement agreement, or it can say the whole title, which is the Standard Charter First Nations Métis Inuit Education Enhancement Agreement. I would just put enhancement agreement. Under on this.
Trustees, is there agreement to that addition? Any objection? That's agreed.
Thank you. It's not to put pressure on the staff to bring us a report. It's just kind of diarize a future conversation at some point.
I understand. Thank you for that. All right, friends, are there any other? Trustee McMurray?
Your can of worms here, everyone.
Yeah, well, we have a list. It's the rule of lists.
Yes.
If you have a list, there will always be something missing.
On the question, I'm not very familiar with the BCSDA rules. In April, it says approved policy positions for submission to the BCSDA at a general meeting. I'm presuming that would be what that means in recommendations that we want debated at the BCSDA AGM. Is that what that's referring to? And if so, then is not April the right?
You made the point earlier and someone agreed with you, and so we tentatively moved it to January.
I thought that was.
Approved policy.
Okay,
It should be now in January as part of the amendment. Do I have that correct, trustees? I think it's looked at.
it's on there in January already, is it not?
It's there for
Yeah, it is.
PCs.
It's easy, oh, sorry.
But then under
Oh, there it is,
February,
February.
it is provide direction.
February sounds, that's provincial council meeting, that's not the.
Yeah, that's not the. I don't think there's a duplication. So I think it is in January.
Okay, I think it's.
Yeah. Anything else, folks, on it? Trustee Hickman?
I have a question. I missed last year's September meeting, and so I didn't see this. Great, I love it. It's a nice comprehensive list. Where do we find this after it's all amended? Is it on their website?
Yeah, it's on the website under board policy, and it's an appendix to all the board.
Thank you.
And Trustee Vandal, I saw your net.
It's not on this, I just want to
passes.
Sorry, I can't hear.
What's not on the list, I'm not talking about this, I have something to show and tell at the end, very fast.
Oh, it's not related to this? Okay, thank you. Let's deal with this first and then I'll invite you to make the comment. And so trustees, we're still dealing with the annual work plan. We have a motion by trustee McMurphy to adopt it. We've agreed to a number of amendments to the plan and hence to the motion. Are there any others? Going once? All right, then I'll call for the vote on the amended motion to adopt the plan with these changes. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you, trustees, for your eagle eyes for that, and it is adopted. All right, that completes the agenda, except that trustee Vandal, you have something you'd like to bring
A little
forward?
show and tell for people who haven't seen Seaside. We were in there 3 times. Lovely article on teacher assistant and calling her a hero and how she works as in the lunch program in Sydney. Very good. We also were on, it is, everyone on Spelling's the music program. And lastly, this one is on trades and profile this student. Like, what a way to give that student history for the rest of his life. And they do it on, I think it's written by Peter Federhat.
Yes.
And it happens.
Better have, all right.
Yeah, and it happens on, anyway, but the 3 articles.
Thank
Covered
you.
magazines.
Thank you so much, trustee Vandal, for bringing that to our attention.
Yes.
Trustee Silva?
Just to point out to trustees and senior staff that I sent, I forwarded a government bulletin today advising that the Victoria School District has been directed by the government to come up with a safety plan after all the controversy around elimination of the police liaison program. And the order for a school safety plan says that a key part of it, this is the government announcement, says a key part of the development of the safety plan is that the board will detail how it will collaborate with the police, First Nations, individual organizations, and service providers. So it's kind of interesting that you don't do what we're expected to do.
Someone is looking.
Yeah. I don't care.
Thank you, trustee Silver, and thank you, trustees, for your work this evening, for our partner representatives and guests for attending. And with that, we are adjourned.
Yeah.